we'll just. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the People Strategy Forum podcast. We're a show that guides leaders on how to elevate the workforce. And we believe that people are at the heart of successful organizations. And so team members, their well-being, rewards, career development, they're all essential to a happy and healthy and highly productive workforce. So this show discusses the practical and effective leadership strategies for top executives, senior professionals, and those talent managers overall. So we're happy to have a team of hosts here. So we have Howard Niswitz, is a senior seasoned compensation professional and also a HR practitioner. And we have Sumit Singla from India, and with a broad depth of global knowledge. So really happy to have him here. And Shar Miller. Shar Miller is now in Puerto Vallarta in a nice warm weather. So I'm sure she's happy to be down there. But Shar comes with a wealth of expertise in small business. She has a lot of her own small business enterprises that she's running, and also she comes from the healthcare system, and she was a HR professional there as well. So glad to have her here. Thank you, Shar. So overall, I'm pleased to introduce you today, Philipp. And Philipp is a visionary. And Philipp, I'm so sorry, I'm forgotten how to pronounce your last name again. So is it Philipp the?
Yeah, well, we settled on Schuch.
Schuch. There you go, Philipp Schuch.
I'm not going to do the crazy German pronunciation anymore.
Let's hear. You got to tell us the crazy German pronunciation.
Well, it's like Klingon. So, like.
Well, it's always good to have you here, Philipp Schuch. So Philipp is Philipp is a good friend. You know, the person that has started out, Gradar several years ago. Gradar is a revolutionary software platform that helps organizations level their jobs appropriately, grade their jobs appropriately, so that you have fair and equitable pay across your organization. And the tool is just enhanced and developed over the years, and now it has the ability to leverage AI and some of those sophisticated technologies to build job descriptions, to better create job or pay fairness. And so today we're going to talk about the important topic of how to use all this technology to enhance competencies and improve career development overall. And so, Philipp, I know if we just start off and go back in history a bit, did you imagine that Gradar would be able to do all this functionality when you first started it?
Well, some pieces of the software were definitely on the roadmap from the beginning. But so basically turning everything that I had in Excel into a web-based version. So this was part of the vision. But then by chance, we met the team over at TMA. And they're the ones who licensed their competencies to us. And this wasn't something we had on the roadmap at all.
Yeah,
but this was really a key moment when we realized, okay, there is more to job evaluation than just building pay bands or just doing compensation benchmarking, but we can really bridge the gap between compensation or rewards and talent management by introducing competencies. Because then it becomes very apparent to the employee and even to the manager what a job is all about. So when we're talking about behaviors that can be observed and that can be used in performance management or in recruiting processes. So that was definitely something we didn't have on the roadmap. The same is true for AI. So when we started the research and development work on Gradar back in 2014, well, it feels like the Stone Ages, really.
Yeah, right. No kidding. I mean, AI just blossomed this last year, and this was the year of AI, really. Yeah. So so it wasn't even on the roadmap back then, but now I mean, just and if we think about the AI's been, of course it's been around, but it hasn't really been at the evolution of what it is this year. And so when it came out, when at the beginning of the year, when you started hearing about AI, a lot of software organizations were really running quickly to leverage the technology. And so what was your sentiment in the early quarter of this year?
I mean, we had been using OpenAI's Playground for quite a while, I would say since 2021. So when they were still quite young in the market and quite early in the market. And we back then used it to help us with the description of job families. So with a short capsule description of a few sentences. And the results were good enough to do just that. But then a year ago, OpenAI said, hey, we have ChatGPT with a much more powerful large language model behind it, with this super easy access through prompts and prompts engineering.
Yeah.
And we figured, okay, we need to use the information that we have in the system, mainly the job grading results with all the factors that we use for the job evaluation process, and put it into a prompt and do something with it. And the most tangible thing would be a job description. So that's what we did. Yeah. So when we talk about job descriptions now, we use the grading results, we use our job families that were produced with OpenAI before that. And we get amazing descriptions out of it, including technical skills.
Well, our discussion today is around job competencies and how they lead to career development. But when we think about, things that you were just talking about, the development of job descriptions, talking about jobs in themselves. So let's just start there. I mean, because when we think about the building blocks of a job or what a job does, we're talking about technical skills, competencies, those behaviors and so forth. But let's just back up and just talk about a job. I mean, do we feel like the nature of work and how we use jobs is going to be around for the next 10 years, or is it going to evolve? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the concept of a job has been around for not only for hundreds of years, but really for thousands of years. So when we look at the old Romans, at the military, and there was a centurion. I think I'm saying it out loud in Latin, so I guess that's not quite sure what the English translation would be.
I think they call it as centurion in English.
Centurion. Okay.
Centurion.
Cool. Centurion.
What about in India, Sumit? What do they call that Roman?
I'm not really sure, to be honest, but since we're talking jobs and Romans, I just found out a couple of days ago that the universal sign for money, when we do this, it comes from those times, because people were paid their salaries in salt, and this is how you'd check if salt is of good quality or not. So that was interesting.
Yeah. But the concept, and this is something that comes from the Roman military and was probably even around in even thousands of years before that. So I don't really think that we're going to lose this concept anytime soon, especially not when I'm looking at what the requirements are from the European Union when it comes to pay transparency. They all want us to look at jobs and to deliver job evaluations. So
it's just an easy way. It's just an easy way of grouping a series of tasks that need to be done traditionally, right?
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. And it makes a lot of sense to have it, because when you have a job and a job description, it becomes very clear to the employee what the organization expects of them. And you can reuse this, so you don't have to write a job description for each and every person. because you have the job description of an accountant and you can recycle it over and over again. So that's it's just efficiency. So I don't want to create individual position profiles for each and every employee. I mean, it's a complete administrative nightmare. So why not consolidate this into something a bit more abstract, like a job? So the Romans did it for a good reason, or even the Babylonians or Sumerians or whoever did that.
Right. And I think that, even though we were talking about AI earlier, I mean, even though we have the capability of being able to mass produce job descriptions and even customize them on an individual basis, the question comes, I mean, should we? Is it necessary, or and so forth? So
definitely not, because you're only going to create a new form of bias, because the one who's shouting out the loudest, but I have this additional task and I need to be paid more, then gets paid more. So you need to have this abstraction level in an organization to ensure, well, fair pay, transparent pay, to be able to close the gender pay gap, to build something like universal career paths, and to manage competencies and everything. For the organization, it doesn't matter what somebody wants to do in terms of what kind of competencies or soft skills they want to learn. It only matters what the organization needs. I mean, I guess there's some wiggle room in there for personal growth, but at the end of the day, the job needs to get done.
And so when we're thinking about breaking the job down into its components, there's the technical competencies that need to take place, and that where we need certain certifications and certain education levels, and then there's the behavioral side, the competencies, and so forth. So what I mean, is that all the elements, or am I missing something that is important in the construction of a job and the pieces that we need to consider?
So the most basic section on a job profile would be the core responsibilities and or core duties. And they can be very extensive. So when we might have a long list of tasks, or you can actually sum up the tasks in a core responsibility.
Yeah.
Like run machine A and not push button B and push button C and etc. So this is the key part. Then we have the technical skills needed, or technical competencies needed. We have the formal education needed. Definitely, this is something that you might need. You might even need certain certifications, for example, to install a power line, or to handle a natural gas supply or something like that. So you can't just do that, but you need to be certified to do that, maybe even by a state body. Same is true for medical doctors or lawyers that would go through a bar exam, etc. And then we might have communication requirements, language skills that are a bit in between technical skills and being a category of its own. And we have the competencies, the soft skills. And the soft skills are great because this is something you can actually observe. So you can check whether someone has technical skills or has the formal education required. But with the soft skills, they might be expressed in different ways. So they might be, someone might be very proficient or a starter on a certain skill. And this is something when you observe it, and when you then use this observation, you can use in performance management, you can use as part of professional growth, or even as part of the recruiting process, if you need them on a certain level for the job, for example.
Right. So there's a bit of discretion in determining the degree of a person's soft skills at times, it seems. But I think one of the big things of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this, that the job and then also the components of the job, is that I think that in the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years, we've been a bit spoiled, and because we've been living in a job world where we didn't have to worry too much about the individual components because they were traditionally there. But now let's just look at what happened in history too, because in the past 20 to 30 years, we were in the process of offshoring, and we were taking a lot of tasks and changing the job by sending parts of that job offshore to where it could be done at a cheaper way, higher quality experience, a high value way, and that worked for a while. But then now we're being faced in a situation where there's supply chain crunches across the globe, and we're thinking about a lot of organizations are thinking about onshoring or nearshoring or upskilling as a result of all of that. So now I think we're getting I've seen over the past 2 to 3 years a harder look on those job components as we're thinking about retooling or those new things that we need to upskill on and bring them in, or to bring that talent back into our organization, and training and development. Are you seeing that in Europe, in your perspective, a greater need for upskilling?
So I think there are several European countries where we have, where we have a clear differentiation between professional labor and skilled labor. Mm-hmm. Skilled labor being labor that is done by former apprentices. And these apprenticeships, this is something that you see in several European countries, or formalized vocational training of maybe 3 years, partially on the job, that would leave people skilled and able to handle different tasks, not only the ones that they were previously trained for. So this is something that we've had for centuries, I would say. Mm-hmm. And this hasn't changed much. Okay. But what we can see is over here that especially support roles in commercial environment, they are being more and more filled by someone with an undergraduate degree. So in the past, they were filled with someone with an apprenticeship. Today, it's more of an undergraduate degree. So this is definitely a change that is happening. And the other thing is, nearshoring, yes, it's happening, but nearshoring in Europe is going to Eastern Europe, or going to Italy, or going to Portugal. And that's been going on for decades, ever since the European Union was created. So this is something we have. But really, there's no numbers that would support that production is being pulled out of China, for example, and back into Europe. That's not yet happening really on a large scale. Okay. It's more like China's getting too expensive, and people are relocating to Thailand, to Vietnam, to other parts of Asia.
Right. So Sumit, what is your perspective? What are you seeing out of India in this regard?
So it's interesting to think about the historical context, Sam, because jobs have existed for ages, and one of the things that something Philip said earlier about the Romans, it set me thinking that while we talk about remote jobs and people working from home, earlier all jobs were like that. So pre-industrial revolution, if I had been a carpenter, you would not want me to come to your place. You would come to my workshop or to my house to get stuff done. And I think it's interesting that we're seeing some kind of a shift in that direction. From an Indian standpoint, I think we're still, more than 60% of the population is still engaged in agriculture. So formal jobs or the white collar jobs are relatively fewer, but as they catch on, I think the trends that Philip is talking about in Europe, they're more likely to become prevalent. So right now we rely more on the manufacturing kind of jobs and on agriculture as an economy, but services is becoming more and more important, of course. So those trends will start showing up.
Great. Well, let's switch a little bit of the gears in the conversation a bit, Philip, back to the Gradar system and how Gradar breaks down jobs and the now that you have the job description module. In addition to that, you have the competencies and so forth. How does this all come together?
So the competencies, they are from Team A, as I said. And the beauty of their system is, and it has been around for 25 years, so it's available in a number of languages, and it has proven its use in thousands of organizations. So when we met the team of Team A back in, I think it was 2015, we talked to them and then realized the integration in 2017, I think. And the cool thing is, and this is something I would like to share from their website. So they have this website called competencylibrary.com. And here you can find all of the 53 competencies that they have. So let's take for, you can scroll down, you can see there's everything there. And I'm not going to use discipline, even though I'm a German and very disciplined. No, that's not going to happen. I'm going to use customer orientation. So, there's an error on their website. Cool. I'm going to use cooperation.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Looks like they're having a problem with their website.
But I certainly have something on my drive and I can pull something up. Oopsie.
I was going to say we should try courage next.
Creativity, but I'm on it. No, it's broken. Okay. It's what happens. So here we go. There, I have a PDF.
This might be your system because I'm getting theirs. It's coming up fine on mine.
So it's me, not you. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Because here I'll
competencylibrary.com.
Yeah. So here I am in accountability. So they have these the different behavioral examples.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. That's the one. So I have it on my other screen now too. So the great thing about TMA is they don't just have the competency description of being accountable and passing on accountability for own action, etc. But they would use the behavioral examples on 4 different levels. So there's the basic level, that's really the entry level. That's called general. Yeah, and here you get 4 basic behavioral anchors that could be relevant for anyone in an organization. But since the behavioral anchors are scaled, and when we look at operational, you can see an increase in quality of these behavioral anchors. So they become more demanding in a way.
Right. And
this is something that aligns extremely well with any grading structure. So low-level jobs for unskilled laborers, or maybe even some of the lowest semi-skilled laborers, they align great with the general level. And once we're talking about skilled labor, we would be looking at the next level, so at the operational level. And then we are talking about young professionals, maybe even senior professionals, that's tactical. And once we talk about experts, subject matter experts, they are on the strategical level. And that's something that aligns, as I said, extremely well with any grading structure. And so that's what we built. We said, okay, we have our career paths in Gradar, we have our grades there. Let's show competencies. But competencies, you can't really have a one size fits all. Well, I know you can have it. I'm not a big fan of it, but So what we did is we used the global job families that we have in Gradar, and a job family helps to characterize the content of a job without giving us exact tasks, etc. But through this characterization and the leveling through the grading exercise, we can show we do show up to 7 competencies on the right level with a high degree of relevance to the job family.
Yeah, that's great. So basically, what you're saying is that based on the function that you're selecting out of the global function, like finance or HR or whatever it may be, you're pulling in the competencies that are most dominant for that particular function, the 7 most dominant competencies, and they can still be customized by as well. Is that right?
Absolutely. So a talent manager could say, hey, we want to have another competency on here. So you might have 8 competencies or remove one. And this could be done on a job per job basis. Or if an organization configures their own job functions or job families or job clusters in the Gradar system, you could even build their own alignment between grading result and competencies. So you can really customize this in very deep detail.
Yeah.
Which means, and this is a task of HR. So when I think about HR, it's about the behaviors that we would try to work with, and it's also about the values of an organization that we stand for. So this is a great way of saying, hey, it's not all about the technical tasks and skills, so the what someone has to do, but also about how they are supposed to behave in this organizational context.
Yep, totally makes sense. I mean, that's definitely, now it's been, now as I was just about to talk to Shar, and I noticed you just took a drink. But Shar, yeah, but I know that you have that deep expertise as an HR practitioner and leading HR teams and so forth, and large organizations. And so in the US, when you were an HR CHRO, did you utilize competencies in your organization?
Oh, absolutely. We utilize compensation, but it was very hands-on. Sorry for the background noise there. But it was extremely hands-on, very labor-intensive. A lot of our compensation analytics department had to basically do the research, also to accommodate not only totally expired job descriptions that were decades old, also to partner with the health department for the ADA accommodation. And so utilizing technology today would really make that job far more easier. And I think that the fact that our compensation analytics department could really sit down face to face with like Philip and expertise like on this team, as well as a comp team, to really spend more time to really talk about the day-to-day functions of every position and job description, instead of just whipping out things that they pull from the internet or various other resources that were probably outdated anyway. So to me, this seems like a great way to really, refine and really make those job descriptions more specific and more realistic to today's times, because things have really changed over the years.
Yeah. So did you actually use competencies in your job descriptions at some of your larger organizations?
It was funny because you talk about that. When I was at my first healthcare system, the word competencies weren't really utilized. And I know this is decades ago. But the word competencies weren't really utilized. And it wasn't until I got to, let's say, Kaiser Permanente, which is the word competencies, really started, flooding our job descriptions and conversation. And I have to be quite honest with you. At first, my mind was kind of like, competencies. Okay, let's wrap my head around what it means. It seemed a bit foreign initially. And again, I've been in HR for a long, long time. But to describe your job descriptions with competencies, and then also have your employees really appreciate what that means, is really important. Because oftentimes employees and leaders think it's just a list of job duties. A job description is job duties, I type letters, I respond to mail, I, I mean, very specific functionality, but really didn't describe your behavioral-based competencies as Philip describes. So that's why when I think it really started setting in when I ran my own business and started really building my company culture around competencies and using the TMA. And that's when it really started making complete sense to me about how we build our company around competencies.
So one thing that Rohan just put a question in the chat here. He says certain employees need higher challenges to develop a competency. Other employees may need easier challenges to develop their competency. And in that case, we may need adaptive assessments to guide an employee in their competency development journey. So basically, ways to really measure that more effectively. And so how are you seeing tools coming out in the marketplace, Philip, where it might address this need?
Absolutely. So, but I would like to show something from TMA that partially answers the question. So we have the behaviors. So here is something that you as HR and as part of, let's say, an assessment center or a people manager can observe.
Right.
So if you can observe it, you can say, and that's a very binary decision then, yes or no. Or it's not binary anymore when you say, well, partially. And this partial part in between yes and no, this is where it becomes interesting. And this is where you start thinking about how to develop a competency, or whether you can develop that someone delivers work on time and it is as agreed.
Right.
Can be yes or can be no, or yeah, sometimes. So what we have in the TMA system, there's something that's called development potential. That's part of the overall system that they have. But there are also development activities. So some examples of what can be done on the end of the employee to improve themselves. Or there's even something like coaching advice. So for a people manager who's supposed to guide and manage and lead people, this is something they can use with their employees to help them improve. And that's, I think, quite exciting, and to bring all of this together. Having this on a website is quite manual. When you use the TMA system, you would get for each profile, you could actually get the output and do something with the output. Other systems out there, and this is quite interesting. I mean, we have the US-based system of Talent Guard. And I mean, you know the team quite well.
Yeah.
So they do an amazing job of using job profiles, creating competency profiles, maybe even a very structured approach, and then mapping the requirements of the jobs and the competencies and the technical skills against the employees. So what they show and what they bring to the table, either by importing it from LinkedIn or other sources. So this is definitely a super exciting platform. Another platform that I like very much is CoBrainer. They have this super intelligent approach of, and I guess this little screenshot shows you what they do, of looking at the skills in the employees and mapping them against growth paths within the organization.
Right.
So they are really specialized on this. And there's another vendor called Brick. I actually met the CEO a couple of weeks ago in Athens, and we had drinks together in a Hemingway bar. So that was quite fun.
Nice.
And they also support with talent acquisition and talent management by, doing something similar of mapping talent against the needs of an organization. So I think these are three vendors that are out there. And then, I mean, obviously you have SuccessFactors bringing in even more capabilities for talent management and for mapping of skills, etc. You have Cornerstone that are improving a lot. You have Workday and numerous others.
Yeah,
so
a
when
lot
you
of good
go
options.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And the nice thing about the TMA, as you mentioned, is it starts with a free platform that a lot of people can utilize right there. So, but a lot of exciting technology coming out around this. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, great. So and where do we think this is all heading in the future, Philip? I mean, if you had a kind of a crystal ball of what the next 10 years looks like, what are your thoughts there?
Okay, there are a couple of things. One thing is many organizations still need to digitalize. So they often don't even have a basic HRIS in place. Or maybe just a system that has, some basic payroll capabilities, some basic people management capabilities. But when it comes to performance management, maybe they sell it as performance management if there's a digitalized form in there. But really utilizing skills or competencies and mapping them against the employees, that's not part of the mid-sized suites. This is really organizations like Gradar or Talent Guard, they stand out of the crowd by doing this. So I think there's a lot of need to digitalize and to actually introduce these systems. And that's going to be a challenge. Costs are going to be a challenge. So to have your C-level give you the budget to do this might be easier in very large organizations, but will definitely be much harder in a smaller organization where HR is seen as, the payroll office. But given the dramatic changes in some markets, so when I look at Japan, when I look at European societies that are getting older by the day, where talent is becoming scarce, you need to take care of your people. And when you invest today, when you start upskilling them, I think it's the best investment that you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely the trend. I think that is prevalent is companies are starting to wise up. They're starting to understand the true cost of turnover, because they lose somebody and there's not necessarily a person that's readily available with the right skill sets to come in to replace that person. And I think that we're going to find that more and more in the future. So creating programs using tools like Gradar and TMA and CoBrainer, some of those other pieces that you had out there, Talent Guard, those are going to be essential to ensure that we can attract and, most importantly, retain our people for the long term by continually developing them, upskilling their abilities, and keeping them overall happy and satisfied to stay in the organization.
But Philip, these systems are becoming more and more prevalent and easy to implement, and the cost is actually coming down given years ago. What can be done to better educate the C-suite about the benefits of implementing this technology? I think we're missing the piece maybe that's connected to business results. Any thoughts?
Well, the business case. I mean, when you want to talk about numbers, it's about the costs of a new hire, and the costs of not having someone on a position at all. So on being short-staffed. So I think those are numbers that you can actually use. And if you have a high turnover, or if you don't really have the people in your organization, this is something where you can put figures on it. But still, to find an open ear, that's a challenge. And if HR is seen as the payroll office or as the people who write contracts, and really, this is the case in many organizations still. You don't have to talk about skill management or competency management. Then your basic task is, hey, introduce an HRIS, maybe introduce some kind of employee or management self-service to actually upskill your HR department and to educate your managers. And that's the reality in many organizations that we are talking to. So start with the basics, do your homework, and then go step by step.
Great, thanks.
Well, we do have a good question. I think, Sumit, this is right up your alley, from Anna. What recommendations would you give on the topic of retention, where a company doesn't have a large budget but don't want to lose great talent? What would you do, Sumit?
I think it's an easier business case because you don't have a large budget at all. So if you had a large budget, you could still afford to lose people and spend money to bring in new fresh talent. Since you don't have a large budget already, it's easier to convince people saying we need to really focus on retention. And as we've seen in multiple studies, culture is a great way of retaining people when you don't have the right kind of budget. So there are different studies which say culture is worth, say, about 20-25% of future pay gains. And so you can prevent people from leaving for compensation reasons simply by building a better culture. And I think the entire discussion we've been having on competencies kind of flows in, where if you're helping people in becoming better at what they do, if you're investing in skill building and you're giving them the picture that you're aligned with some of their career ambitions, which further align with the business goals, I think they'd be more than willing to stay and to carve out positions for themselves. But I have a related question to this as well for Philip, which is in organizations which are extremely number oriented or data oriented, kind of similar to what Howard was saying, how do we go about creating a business case for investing in competencies in the first place? So how do you prevent yourself from getting thrown out of the room saying competencies, it's just HR mumbo jumbo, and we'd rather focus on the hard numbers and the top line and the bottom line?
This is not 100% my area of expertise in reading, because I was just stepping in for my colleague Sophie today. I can't really answer it perfectly, so I rather not do it.
Well, I have something to comment. So I would say the biggest turnover in the first 90 days is the worst in organizations. And that really impacts the budget, from like what you mentioned, Sumit, the fact that we spent so much time recruiting and relocating an employee of a high level, also any level in the organization. And I think oftentimes, you know what it feels like when you come onto a job and you have no clue what your expectations are at work.
Mhm.
And you're sitting there, you're just trying to struggle, you're introduced to a laptop that doesn't quite work. No offense, IT. You don't even have all the tools and resources to do your job, right? And you're sitting down and you're just like kind of shadowing someone and wandering around like a loose puppy. No offense. I mean, seriously, it just really sucks. It is like outside of your comfort zone as a new employee. And sadly, a lot of our leaders, particularly those that are overtaxed with a big span of control, they oftentimes throw like a new employee into the weeds, right? You've heard that all the time. Throw them into the sharks, throw them into the deep end of the pool. And obviously, I'm in around pools right now. But the thing is that it feels very uncomfortable, and you're feeling like, why did I make this decision to work with this company if I don't even understand the basic elements of what's expected of me at work? How do I be the most successful in my first 90 days? How do I utilize these tools and resources? What are the basic phone numbers of people that I can call? And that also goes for small organizations like mine, back when I only had 23 to 30 employees. it really needed a coach, a mentor, and someone to really explain what competencies are, talent, skills, and abilities. The reason why we hired you is because you have talent, skills, and ability, and we absolutely need this right now. So please just hang in there with us. We're going to get you up to speed. We call it the 4 seasons of HR, helping you get through those 4 seasons to help you be absolutely 100% successful and therefore reduce turnover, which also impacts budget. So that's my answer. What do you think, Sam?
Nice. I love that, Shar. Love it. Love it. So the one thing that I would add to this and you know, kind of what Anna was asking for, man, how do we increase retention? And I'm going to tout a little bit of our recent book that we just came out with Sumit and I wrote on the workforce experience. And this is something that Shar was just talking about as well. You know, some of the pieces to ensure that there's some stickiness in keeping people in the organization have to do with a multitude of different things. You know, does the organization have a compelling purpose? Do they have leadership that people trust to be able to realize that purpose, that mission, that important mission? Is the organization and its managers enabling people to do their best work, just like you mentioned, Shar? That's quite important. And then, as we're talking about today, and what Philipp's system helps with is ensuring that there is a framework where people can be paid fairly, and then also we can identify the skills and competencies that are necessary for development and advancement in their role. That career architecture that is so important to be put in place. So there's a lot of those elements.
Yeah, so I think there are 3 points. So we know that when employees are emotionally attached to the organization, this will have a positive impact on their attitudes and actions. So they will be less absent than others. They will be performing better, and they will be, well, yeah, more engaged, really. If you have employees that view your organization's culture or like it very much, then it will be more likely that they will be committed to their organization, which means they are less likely to quit when times get rough or tough. And but it requires the organization to provide clarity on the roles that someone has, on the job. So we need job clarity. We need social support from the organization. So they need to know that the organization will take care of them. And the employees need autonomy. That's the other big thing. And this also increases commitment to the organization. And when it comes to role and job clarity, this is something you can handle with job evaluation. This is something you can handle with the job description and with the competency profile, especially if it's not just on paper, but part of the processes, part of the onboarding, part of the performance management, maybe even part of the recruiting, ideally even part of the recruiting process.
Right.
So that's what we do.
And in my view, it needs to be part of every aspect of talent management strategy in every single category. And Anna, I'd like to address your question personally, because I have been in charge of talent management strategy for large organizations. And I totally agree. It's really tough. Oftentimes we forget our long-term superstar employees, and we don't really spend the time with those individuals. And sadly, they do what's called quietly quitting. And within 6 months, they depart without even letting you know. All of a sudden, they're just boom, 2-week notice or 4-week notice if they even give you that. And so my recommendation as a former talent management expert for big organizations is to brush off the dust out of your former talent management strategy plans. Maybe look at some of these tools that we're talking about, some of the free resources of the TMA. Maybe look at some of the things, the compteam.net and some of the prior forums that we have, and really just re-energize your talent management strategy and really commit to those long-term employees and those committed employees that have really been the superstars and the backbone of that organization, that we are going to invest in those individuals deeply, just like we do with new hires. So, and also not forget your bad performers, because oftentimes your bad performers are burnt out employees that perhaps got burnt in the past. So don't completely blow them off. unless they're really bad performers. So that's just my 2 cents.
I like that. Thanks, Shar. And the other thing I would just add on to that as we wrap up our discussion today is it's so important to know what your workforce is looking for in their experience at your organization. You know, so understanding what their expectations are, understanding what their how they think about your rewards program. Do they believe it's fair? Do they understand it? Do they understand the benefits and how they can move up in their career? The different programs you have available. There's a lot that that can be had just by having a good discussion with your people. And then and I think that, you know, that's some of the first steps that are important to take. And then of course, having those more engaging one-on-one discussions is important as well to understand. I mean, as we talked about several years ago, now that it's coming back in style now, is the stay interview. You know, that we before the pandemic, we were talking a lot about just having the performance review. And then after the pandemic, people started having changes in what they would want to do in their life. And so the stay interview became really important. I think that was a good process, and it deserves to stay in as a regular process for organizations to ensure that they keep the dialogue open, for sure. All right. Well, I know that we are at the top of the hour, so I just wanted to say thank you, Philip, for filling in with Sophie. I hope she starts feeling better, and I know that she wasn't feeling well, but thank you so much for filling in with her. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Anytime.
Thank you, Phil.
All right. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week on the People Strategy Forum. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Philip.
Safe
All right,
travels.
bye, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.